A homeless man finds a wounded, starving dog. Despite facing misery himself, he takes the dog in and cares for its injuries, forming a deep bond between them. Days later, the man is happy to see his new friend recovering and healthy. But one day, a luxury car stops in front of him, and a man steps out, walking straight toward him. When the man starts to speak, it leaves him in shock. New York seemed determined to cast out the weak that day. It was late afternoon when the light rain began to sharpen into a cold blade. The droplets struck the shoulders of hurried pedestrians like they were trying to drive them off the streets. But not everyone had somewhere to go. Walter Briggs, wrapped in 3 layers of filthy clothes and a blanket barely clinging to his body, curled up under the awning of a closed cafe on 3rd Avenue. His fingers were tucked into his socks, and the socks inside plastic bags. The steam rising from the subway grates was the closest thing to heating he could afford. Suits, delivery guys, tourist couples, and mothers pushing strollers passed him by. No eye contact, no greetings, just quick steps and averted gazes. People with earbuds in, eyes glued to their phones, and hearts somewhere else. A boy, maybe 10 years old, noticed him. "Dad, why is that man all wet?" he asked, pointing. The father pulled the boy's arm without answering, like Walter was some wild animal that might lash out. They crossed the street. Walter didn't move. He had long since learned that silence hurt less than any reply. Minutes later, a bike courier stopped next to him to tie a bag to his backpack. He looked at Walter with disgust. "Hey man, move along. You're gonna scare off customers." He nudged Walter's blanket with the toe of his sneaker. Walter didn't react. He just stood up slowly, the blanket slipping to his feet like dust being swept away. His dignity was in his restraint, not in his pride. He crossed the street to a deeper awning where a pile of empty cardboard boxes fought against the rain. He picked 2 that were still dry and stacked them in a corner. As he worked, a middle-aged woman dropped a few coins near him. She didn't say a word, just turned and walked away. The coins bounced on the wet asphalt and rolled. Walter didn't pick them up. He just stared, his eyes carrying a quiet blend of gratitude and sadness. It was as if even acts of kindness came laced with shame. The cold was getting worse. The soaked blanket now weighed like a burden. Walter sat down, leaning against a brick wall, pulled his hood down, and tried to sleep sitting up, hugging himself. Then he heard it. A faint, muffled sound. A whimper. He opened his eyes. Waited. Nothing. But then it came again, a thin, almost inaudible cry coming from behind a metal trash bin a few yards away. Curious, he dragged himself over, pushing aside 2 torn garbage bags. Beneath a collapsed cardboard box, soggy from the rain, he found a small golden shape, soaked to the bone. A dog. A golden retriever, or what was left of one. It was trembling, one front paw swollen and streaked with dried blood. Its eyes were half closed, body curled tight, clinging to what little warmth it had. Walter looked around. No one in sight. He picked up the dog carefully, feeling how light, too light, it was. Clearly starving. He looked at the dog. The dog looked back. "Well, would you look at you? Worse off than I am," he said, his voice hoarse, unsure whether to laugh or cry. And then, without thinking, he took off his own coat, the only one he had, wrapped the dog gently in it, and leaned back against the wall, shielding the animal with his body. That night, in the middle of wet concrete and urban indifference, 2 invisible souls found each other, one with an injured paw, the other with a broken heart. The next morning, the sun didn't show. New York woke under a leaden sky, and Walter hadn't really slept. Every 10 minutes, the dog trembled, whimpered, or shifted. Walter held him with tired arms, his chest a makeshift shelter. By morning, the rain had turned into a cold mist. Walter carefully laid the dog on a brittle blanket he had stuffed into a torn backpack. He took out a piece of bread he'd gotten the night before and split it in 2, half for the dog, half for himself. The dog sniffed it, hesitated, then ate. Afterward, he licked Walter's hand with a warm, weak tongue. "Well, if you ate that, there's still some hope in you, huh?" The dog slowly raised his eyes, as if he understood. Walter smiled. It was his first smile in months. Later that morning, Walter fashioned a splint using a broken branch and some duct tape he found on the sidewalk. He tore one of his shirt sleeves to tie it in place. His fingers trembled, more from cold than fear, but his movements were careful, almost skilled. "I'm no vet, buddy," but I fixed every broken engine in this country for 20 years. I figure I can fix a paw too. Walter adjusted the bandage carefully. Emily would have loved you. She was the kind of person who'd stop in the middle of the road to save a squirrel. Me? Took me a while to understand that kind of thing. He fell silent. The city noise filled the space. Horns, footsteps, a siren in the distance. He leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. Emily was always there, lingering in the shadows of his memory. She used to bring coffee to the garage and remind him to eat. She had calm eyes and small hands that could heal any wound, human or not. When she passed, the garage lost its scent of grease and gained the silence of ghosts. He tried to keep going. Tried for months. But her absence was like rust. It ate everything from the inside until the engine just stopped. Walter opened his eyes. The dog was staring at him, like it could hear every thought. I think I'm going to call you Lucky, even if luck's still a long way off. Lucky wagged his tail for the first time. Barely noticeable, but enough to spark something inside Walter. In the days that followed, Walter and Lucky became inseparable. While most people still ignored them, some began to notice. Not the man, but the dog. Hey, that homeless guy has a golden retriever? He must have stolen it. Walter heard it. Pretended he didn't. In the park, he made makeshift toys out of plastic bottles. Lucky could now stand on all fours. He still limped, but tried to run. Walter laughed. Real, deep laughter. Like something broken inside him had started to shift. One day, Walter ran into Mickey, another man who lived on the streets, someone he knew from cold nights past. You got yourself a dog now, Briggs? Mickey asked, half mocking. Yeah, better company than most people. You know they're offering big money for a missing dog? If that's the one, you're sitting on gold. Walter just looked at him. He's not mine, but he's not for sale either. Mickey shrugged. That night, as Lucky slept with his head resting on Walter's chest, the man looked up at the sky. No stars, just the distant sound of wet tires and a city that didn't stop for anyone. He closed his eyes and whispered, You've got no idea what you've done to me, kid. You made me come back. The days grew less cold, but the city didn't change. Lucky could walk without limping as much. Sometimes, he'd chase pigeons in the park, stumbling over his long legs, making children smile and adults suspicious. Walter was still invisible. But now, every so often, someone noticed Lucky. A young woman took a picture. A teenager tried to play. An older man muttered, not to Walter, but out loud. That dog looks just like the one on TV. The billionaire's dog. What's his name again? Walter didn't answer. He just gently pulled Lucky closer. That night, he stopped by a newsstand. From a distance, a headline caught his eye. A photo of a gray-haired, polished man next to a golden dog, identical to Lucky. Billionaire Ethan Caldwell raises reward for lost dog. Hendrix disappeared 2 weeks ago in Central Park. Walter's stomach twisted. He looked at Lucky, sleeping beside him, curled up in the old coat. Hendrix, huh, he murmured. So, you've got an owner. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Mickey showed up again, with a crooked grin. I saw it, Briggs. I saw the article. That dog's worth $100,000. 100,000. Walter didn't respond. You could change your life. Just hand him over. Or, let me handle it for you. He's not a commodity, Mickey. I'm not handing him over to anyone. I take care of him. He trusts me. So what? You're gonna run off with him to Alaska? Mickey laughed and walked off, but Walter already knew. This wouldn't end here. The following afternoon, Walter and Lucky were lying under the shade of a tree in the park. Walter was dozing. Lucky had his head resting on Walter's legs. It was a warm day. For the first time in a long while, there was peace. Until a black car pulled up right beside the curb. A man in a light-colored suit stepped out, phone in hand, walking quickly. Hey, that dog, he shouted. Walter jolted awake. Lucky stood up with a sharp bark. That's Hendrix. I saw the news. I'm a lawyer. There's a reward for him. Without asking, the man lunged and grabbed the dog by his makeshift collar. Lucky panicked and began to bark, trying to back away. Walter stood up, dizzy, and shoved the man away. Let go of him. He's scared. Are you crazy? You trying to hide the dog on purpose? Planning to run off with him? Lucky growled, legs tense, fur bristling. I saved this dog. He was dying in a box. I took care of him. That doesn't matter. He has an owner. I'm taking him now. The man yanked harder. Lucky snapped, catching the edge of his sleeve. The lawyer recoiled, shouting, This dog's dangerous. He bites. Did you train him to attack people? A woman nearby stepped forward, phone in hand. I saw everything. He didn't do anything wrong. You grabbed the dog. Stay out of it. She ignored him and started filming. My name's Diane. I already called the police. They're on their way. And you're not going anywhere. Walter held Lucky against his chest. He was shaking. The police arrived minutes later. 2 officers approached. One held a microchip scanner and ran it over Lucky's neck. A beep sounded. Confirmation. The officer looked at his partner, then at Walter. This is Hendrix, the missing dog owned by Mr. Ethan Caldwell. Walter lowered his head. Lucky licked his hand. The lawyer, still flustered, adjusted his blazer. Now arrest this man. He kept an animal that wasn't his. That's a crime. Hold on, said one of the officers. We're taking him in to give a statement. But the rightful owner of the dog will decide what happens next. Diane stepped in. I want to give a statement too. This man saved that dog. He took care of him. He's the hero here. Walter didn't say a word. He just looked at Lucky. It's gonna be okay, kid. It's gonna be okay. The siren on the patrol car chirped softly. The park gate faded into the distance. And for the first time, someone said his name out loud, without contempt. Mr. Walter Briggs, would you come with us? He nodded, picked Lucky up in his arms, just like he did that first day, and got into the police car. Not as a criminal, but as someone finally being taken seriously. The Caldwell estate looked more like a 5-star hotel than a home. A wall of glass and concrete, lined with perfectly manicured trees. The gates opened slowly as the police car approached. 2 security guards watched the scene with furrowed brows, as if Walter were carrying a weapon. Lucky, or Hendrix, jumped out of the back seat and headed straight for the front door. A soft, familiar bark escaped him. The door opened, and there he was. Ethan Caldwell. Tall, impeccably dressed. Silver hair perfectly combed. His eyes were tired, but sharp. He knelt without a word. Hendrix ran to him, leaping into his arms. The billionaire closed his eyes and held the dog tight. You came back, buddy, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Behind him, a group of staff members stood silently. The man in the light suit, the same lawyer who had tried to snatch the dog, was there too. This man kept Hendrix for days, he said. He should be held accountable. Ethan lifted his gaze, and for the first time, he looked directly at Walter. Is it true? You stayed with him? Walter stood still. His hands were still dirty, his cap soaked. He looked like someone who didn't belong in a place like that. I found him in a cardboard box. Hurt, shaking, bleeding. I took care of him, fed him, cleaned his wounds, slept with him on my chest so he wouldn't freeze. I didn't know who he was. The room fell into a heavy silence. And when did you find out? Ethan asked. When I saw the article. At a newsstand. He'd already been with me for a few days. But by then, he was already my friend. Hendrix lay down next to Walter, like a bridge between 2 worlds. Ethan watched them with the look of someone trying to understand something that defied logic. Why didn't you turn him in? Because the world takes everything from those who have nothing. I didn't want to lose the one living soul who'd trusted me in years. The lawyer stepped in. Mr. Caldwell, I suggest we resolve this with a fair sum and— Shut up, Neil. The silence returned, heavier now. Ethan walked toward Walter. What's your name? Walter. Walter Briggs. What did you do before this? Mechanic. Had my own shop. My wife handled the register, the customers. She was great with animals. She passed away. After that, I just started disappearing. Ethan stared at him for a few long seconds, then turned to the officers. He's not to be charged with anything. On the contrary, if this dog is here today, it's because of him. The officers nodded and left. The lawyer, visibly uncomfortable, gathered his papers and disappeared down a hallway. Ethan looked back at Walter. Come with me. They climbed a wide staircase to a glass-walled room. An office. Inside, framed photos of Hendrix, newspaper clippings about the search, maps, notes. I had half the world looking for him. Helicopters, drones, experts. And he was sleeping with you in an alley? Sometimes what we're looking for is exactly where we don't want to look, Walter replied. Ethan sat down. Hendrix lay beside him, but kept his eyes on Walter. What do you want, Briggs? Money? A reward? Just name it. Walter scratched his beard with his calloused fingers. I don't want a handout. Or fame. I just want to be able to live without hiding from the world. And if I can stay close to him. Ethan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. You gave him what I couldn't, even with all of this. Safety, peace, trust. Hendrix walked over to Walter, rested his nose on his knee, and let out a soft sigh. I'm not giving you a reward, Walter. That wouldn't be right. What you did was more than that. So I'm offering you an opportunity. Walter looked up. I have a foundation for animal rescue. We save stray dogs, rehabilitate them, find homes. Most of the people who work there, they've never lived what you've lived. You could teach, care, change lives. Want to work with me? Walter stayed silent, not from doubt, but because, for the first time in a long while, someone wasn't trying to push him away. They were inviting him in. Only if I can start tomorrow. And if I can bring Lucky with me. Ethan smiled, for the first time. His name's Hendrix, but I think Lucky suits him better now. Walter laughed. They both stood. And as they came down the stairs together, Walter noticed something had changed. The staff looked at him differently. One of the security guards even nodded at him. Diane, the woman from the park, was in the room, smiling. I hope someone's recording this, she said. Because the world needs to hear this story. Walter looked at Hendrix, then at Ethan. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel ashamed of where he was. He wasn't just the man on the sidewalk anymore. He was the man who had been seen. And finally, recognized. The first hot coffee Walter had in years didn't come in a paper cup. It came in a ceramic mug, with the scent of a clean kitchen and the soft hum of a radio playing in the background. He held it with both hands, like he was afraid the moment might spill. Hendrix, or Lucky, as he insisted on calling him, was sleeping in the corner of the room, curled up on a new cushion Ethan had specially ordered. Even in that spacious room, with central heating and a real garden outside the window, the dog still slept with one ear turned toward Walter, as if they were still on the street, as if the world still needed watching. A few days later, Walter officially started at the Caldwell Foundation Center for Animal Protection. They welcomed him with respect. He showed up in new clothes, sure, but still walked with the slow steps of someone used to avoiding eye contact. The first dogs he met there didn't bark. They were afraid. The kind of fear only someone like him could recognize. Walter didn't speak much, but when he laid his hand on the fur of a wounded animal, something shifted. As if his touch whispered, I know. I was left behind too. The job wasn't easy. He cleaned, fed, administered medicine, calmed nighttime cries. But Walter did it all with a calmness that spread to the other volunteers. People started to notice. Newspapers published the story. A TV show interviewed him. He gave short, humble answers, always mentioning Lucky first. I just did what anyone should do, not for a reward, but because it was the right thing to do. One day, as he was leaving the foundation, a young woman approached him. Her eyes were full of tears, and she held an envelope in her hand. Mr. Briggs? I'm sorry. I'm your daughter, Alice. Walter froze. His breath caught for a second. He looked at her the way someone looks at an old photograph that suddenly comes to life. I saw your story. I saw you. And I'm sorry. She handed him the envelope. Inside was a letter he had written years ago, but never had the courage to send. She had kept it. And now, she was here. They hugged for the first time in nearly a decade. Hendrix gave a soft growl, then came closer, wagging his tail, almost as if giving permission for the reunion. Weeks later, Walter was invited to a meeting with Ethan. In the foundation's main hall, in front of the team and the press, the billionaire announced, starting today, the Briggs Program for Dogs and Shelter is live. A project to connect unhoused individuals with abandoned animals. Because no one heals alone. Walter didn't say much. Just thank them. And when the mic was offered, he said, I've gone to sleep hungry. I've gone to sleep afraid. But the worst part was going to sleep feeling like I didn't matter. Now, I go home knowing I exist. And that it means something. That night, back in the small apartment the foundation had given him, Walter took off his shoes slowly. He lay down on the firm mattress. Hendrix hopped onto the bed, circled around a few times, then curled up beside him. Walter turned off the light. But before closing his eyes, he said, We made it, buddy. It's not a mansion. It's not money. But we were seen. And we stayed. Hendrix let out a long, contented sigh. Outside, the city kept rushing by. But inside that warm, quiet room, there was peace. And this time, it wasn't luck. It was earned. The story of Walter and Lucky reminds us that human worth isn't found in appearances or possessions, but in quiet acts of empathy and courage. In a world that often overlooks the invisible, It was someone rejected who showed the greatest capacity to love, to care, and to endure. True transformation begins when we see others with humanity, and when someone, at last, sees us back.